addicted to love. Hold on tight to your dream.
Hi everyone, welcome back for another video. Today I want to cover the big issue about what it's like to live with the Mini Electric. So not what it's like on a test drive, not what it's like when you look at it for 5 or 10 minutes. You see loads and loads of reviews online and they always show you the same old thing, and it's basically because they don't have the car for very long. It's when you have it for a longer period of time you really get to know what the car's like, and that's what I want to cover today, those little things. Does the car grate on you because of the little things? Or does it endear itself to you? Does it get better and better with ownership? So that's what I want to cover today anyway. What's it like with the Mini Electric after a month of ownership? The first big thing to cover, of course, is what does it drive like? And yep, every time I take this car out, it feels fantastic. Every time you press the accelerator, it really feels good. It engages with you. There's just such a connection between you and driving the car that it is literally fun to drive. You just can't wait to get out and drive it for the next time. Interior wise, yeah, there's still not a single rattle, not a single bump, and what I'm noticing, the more bumps I go over, the more I'm appreciating the suspension and the damping and the tyres of the car. Even though this is harder setup than the Kona Electric that I had before, as you go over speed bumps and bumps, it actually feels better in this Mini. It doesn't jar you as much, there isn't as much rattle. The car just feels better. So even though it's harder in suspension setup, because it is a bit sporty, it's still much better, I think, than the Kona. So don't be put off by people saying that it's set up really hard. Comfort-wise, the seats, I thought that this sort of woven texture of the seating would grate on me. I do wear shorts a lot. I thought the fabric would come through and I'd feel it underneath, but they really are exceptionally comfortable seats with lots of support and very sporty. So again, you feel hugged and part of the car. You're not sitting on it, you're sitting in it, and it's a really, really good feeling. So yeah, these seats, I absolutely love them. Do I wish I'd have gone for the level 3 with the leather seats? Well, do you know, actually no, I'm quite happy with this level 2. It's got all the things that I really wanted. I haven't driven it at night yet, so I don't know what the LED lights would be like on this compared to full matrix lights on the level 3. But for the bits extra that I'm aware of that you get with the level 3, I'm really happy with this level 2. Okay, where else to go on what I found with the car? Let's start with the outside, the paintwork especially. Comparing again to my Kona Electric, what I noticed with the Kona was the paint was really good and the lacquer on top was good, but it seemed very flat and perfect and very thinly applied. It was almost like it was a sheet of thin foil over the car. I mean, it was resistant to stone chips, but there was just that thinness to it. With the Mini, when you get really close to it and you look closer at the car's paintwork, I can't describe how you think it, but it just feels less perfect. It feels thicker. It feels like it's got a little bit more texture to it. I mean, it hasn't. It's gloss finished. It's extremely smooth. It's a lovely finish. I'm not saying it's worse. I'm saying it's better. It just feels more hand painted than machine painted. There's a completely different look to the paint when you get really close up to it. And to me, it just looks better quality. On the issue of cleaning the car, the big thing that I noticed difference with this Mini compared to my Kona Electric is the panels and the gaps. On the Kona, like many Euro boxes, they're just big sheets of metal all put together and big gaps between them with some creases to create lines and design on the car. But with the Mini, there's a lot more angles, there's a lot more curves, there's a lot more joints. It's a lot more intricate. So everywhere you look, there's something that's, well, harder to clean. What I notice is when you put a snow foam wash on the car, the soap suds stick in the gaps because the gaps between the panels and all the different fittings, they're tighter tolerances on the Mini. It's better quality than it was on the Kona. With the Kona, the gaps were bigger, all the soap suds washed in between, and they were easy to wipe out. With the Mini, I'm finding that when you're trying to dry the car and get those last pieces of water out before you apply your finishing product, your ceramic coating, then getting that thin microfiber cloth into the gap to actually take that water out is actually quite hard, because in some places it's not the width of the microfiber cloth. So again, there's more joints, there's more angles, there's more intricacy. If you look at the spoiler at the front and the diffuser at the back, the water gathers on those pieces a bit more than the Kona because there's more angles, there's more lines. And the same with the grille front. There's just more... I really don't know why there is so many components and so many different angles on it. Every single one, more water hangs on it, so it's actually a little bit harder to dry this car. Now, I'm making it sound like it's a bad thing, but it's not. It's because all of those extras add up to the car looking a little bit more complex, looking a little bit more sophisticated than what, say, the Kona Electric did, just as a few sheets of metal bolted together and very flat, angular, straight surfaces. It just wasn't as much style, there wasn't as much substance to it. The Mini, everywhere you look, there's a smile. And one of the things that I really notice with the Mini is the curves. Everywhere you look on the car, there's a circle, there's a curve. And just looking at the steering wheel, I can see with the Mini badge there's a circle, and then there's a chrome outer badge, and then there's the plastic around it as another circle. Then there's the steering wheel, there's a circle, all the buttons are circles, the speed limiters and cruise control areas, they're in circles as well. Then there's the speedo, well there's a circle in the middle with an inner circle, and then there's two half circles on the outside. In fact, the only thing that's not really circular is the speedo binnacle itself, that it's... well, what shape would you call that? It's an oblong with rounded sides on it, whatever that is. But everything is just circles everywhere. And it is like the car's smiling at you. It's a warm feeling, whereas when you're in one of cars like a Nissan Leaf or a Kona Electric or a Zoe, there's so many straight lines to it. I mean, the Volkswagen ID especially, there's so many angles, and yet I think curves were a thing a long time ago. And then, with the Mini, it's come back as more of a retro look with the curves. But the angles are very popular at the moment. But I'm done with it. I think angles are now old, and they've done it to death, and they just don't work anymore. They don't make you smile. They're not a pleasing look to the car, the sharpness of it. The curves here in the Mini are much, much nicer. So, yeah, living with it, you just notice that there's curves and circles everywhere, and it is a really pleasing place to be. The only bad thing that I've noticed on the quality is the charge port. The charge port, it's almost as if it was designed by a different company, by different people, and it was a bit of an afterthought. And I guess because this was a petrol diesel car and they've retrofitted all the electric stuff in, I guess it sort of is an afterthought, but it really doesn't fit with the quality of the car. I mean, the bonnet and the hatch and the doors, everything opens solidly on this car. It's really high quality, but the charge port is really the cheapest, nastiest bit of plastic you can imagine. I used to think the Kona Electric charge port door was really cheap and nasty, being plastic, and they could have done a better job. But the Mini one is even worse, and it doesn't actually fit very well. You can see here in this video, I'll try to show you the angle, but because of the shape of the panel, because of the oval shape of the charge port, it's really hard to get it to fit right. It looks like it fits flush on a couple of corners, but at the top, it's not fitting flush at all. Now, whether that's my car or whether it's standard, but it just looks like it's a poor design. It looks like, however you do it, it's not going to fit very well. I also notice more water gets in. Now that might be because of the gap all the way around with the charge port. It's quite a large panel gap that's in there. The tolerances are quite large. So I'm seeing more water in that port. As you plug the Type 2 cable into the socket in there, as well, the angle isn't very straight. You actually have to tilt the cable up. So I'm finding it a little bit more awkward, especially at night, to plug that cable in than I did on the Kona. The design of the positioning just doesn't seem very good. Design-wise, again, especially at night, there's no light in the port. You can't see where you're plugging the cable in, so that's really poor. There's a light that flashes when you're actually charging, but at night there's no way to see where that socket is. And the theme of this charge port just being poor quality just goes on. That what do you do with the cap? So you take the cap out of the Type 2 socket, and where do you put it? Now, yes, there is a position on the charge door where it can hang, but it's a really loose fit. It doesn't fit snugly. So when you've got it on there, every time you walk past, if you're cleaning the car and just knock the door slightly, the cap damn well falls off, and it's just not very good. What I found is if you put the cap on there, then twist it into a position where it's not really supposed to be, that sort of locks it in just a little bit more. But it's a pain in the backside. And then what do you do with the cover off your Type 2 cable? On the Kona, you could hang the cap up, and then the Type 2 cover would fit over the top of your cap. and it would all go together. Now, there's just nowhere for this dangling cover to go. So I loop it over the top of my Type 2 cable, and that seems okay. Unless it's windy, or again you knock it and then it's falling off and rattling everywhere. It just seems poorly designed. It goes against everything with the car. The car is so well designed and everything is so good in the Mini and so good quality. To have that charge port door and everything about it, it is quite annoying. And it's really nice, I guess, that I've got this new car and that's the only thing that I think they've done badly on it. Everything else seems brilliant. Going back to paintwork wise, I had this Nano ceramic coating applied. So it's not one of these ones that cost you £1,000 to get coated from new. It's only a few £100 extra, and it's a bespoke one that Jardine Motors in Bury St Edmunds, that's Lancaster dealer. It's their own bespoke sort of product, and I think it's called Car Care or Elite Car Care. I'm not sure what the name of the product is, but I'll put it in the description of the video for you. It was only a few £100 and they actually threw it in free for me, so you can tell it wasn't a very expensive thing. But wow, it does a good job. Now, I always wash and clean my car with a good shampoo, and I do use Bantz's DDSI ceramic coating afterwards to finish it, which gives it a really glossy, really high sheen, lovely water beading on it anyway. But this with the ceramic coating to start with, and this paintwork, which I think is better than the Kona, gives a finish which is completely different to the Kona. After I've been out for a drive on a dirty road and you want to just hose it off to get rid of the winter grime, on this it literally just runs off and there's no rubbing. There's no need to have a cloth or anything to wipe the dirt off. With Kona you'd spray it even with a pressure washer and it would come off, sort of, but then there'd still be like a thin layer that's stuck to it. This nano ceramic coating that's on this car just seems to repel dirt. Nothing sticks to it. Even when I put snow foam onto the car, the snow foam itself doesn't stick to the car, it runs off. So an extremely high quality finish on this Mini exterior. I'm very, very happy with that. Performance wise, I absolutely love the speed of the car, love the responsiveness. It is super quick. It's actually harder to drive slower in this Mini than it was in the Kona because it's just so addictive. It just wants to go. It's a really lovely feeling to drive. The brakes are excellent, but I do notice there's a little bit more brake dust coming off onto the alloy wheels than there was on the Kona. So I guess the regen braking on this Mini stops at a little higher speed than it did on the Kona. That blending that it does between the friction brakes using the actual pads and discs versus the regen braking, it must use those pads and discs on the Mini just a little bit more. I'm not driving fast, I'm not braking hard, so it must just be the slow speed stuff that it's doing it on. One of the other odd things I would say that I've noticed as a difference is when I've gone to get in the Mini and it needs defrosting or demisting, there's a lot more condensation in the Mini. I have no idea why. It's not as if we've got damp things in the car. It's not because we've had Cracker in the car, our dog or anything like that. There's just more condensation on this front windscreen area, and I do find that a little bit odd. And is it because it's a better seal in the car, just like it is at home that you get more condensation if you haven't got a good airflow in the car? Is the Mini more sealed in and therefore some of the dampness is staying in the car? The only issue for me is the preconditioning. It obviously takes a few more minutes to clear that moisture, but it is definitely more than in the Kona Electric. Might be as well because the Mini is smaller. There's a smaller cabin space, so with people in it breathing more moisture, perhaps that moisture is staying in the car. A really good positive with the Mini is the horn. It actually sounds like a proper horn. In the Kona it was a horrible noise, the same sort of noise that I think Nissan has on their ENV 200 vans. It's a really pathetic sounding horn. It's not a nice two-tone horn, and I did look with Hyundai to try and get the horn changed out, but the dealer said that they couldn't even change the horn because it would change the electronics, and where they had to move the wires, and then the warranty for everything electrical wouldn't be valid. I mean, how ridiculous is that? They wouldn't even change the horn on the car. I mean, that is crazy. So anyway, really happy. You have to really want to bash it one to actually make the horn sound, but it is a really nice quality sound. And that goes everywhere. You know, the indicator stalks and the indicator clicking, every noise the car makes is a nice quality sound. There's nothing that feels or sounds, oh God, I wish I could turn that off. So it's a really great car to live with. I'm sat here in the Mini with the heater on, so I've got the ignition on, I've got the heater on, and it's set at 21 degrees. So yes, I'm using the high voltage battery to heat myself while I'm in the car filming this, but it doesn't take long to heat up. It's very quick, so those PTC heaters, the heating elements that are used to start with before the heat pump takes over, they're quite effective, and they do heat the car up very, very nicely. The only thing that I'm missing is what I said in my test drive video, heated steering wheel. I really would like a heated steering wheel in the car, and it ought to have one. It's a big omission in my mind. But the heated seats, they're lovely, they work fine. Yeah, I'm very happy with the heating controls and all the ventilation. It does clear the windows and it clears the side very quickly. The preconditioning on the car, that's probably worth mentioning. When I had a Kona electric, I really didn't like the idea of the app. I thought it was a waste paying extra money to have an app to do these things, to precondition the car, because they're so quick to defrost anyway. It doesn't take long to go outside and turn the heater on and away you go. So I didn't think you needed an app. But yeah, now I've got one with this Mini. It is nice. It's nice as a gimmick that you can flash the lights. It's nice if you lost the car in the car park, you can have the lights flash. It's nice to be able to upload your destination, so you can use your app to look at a destination. You can click it and you can send that to the sat-nav in the car. That's really nice. It doesn't automatically load to the sat-nav, so you do have to go in and click a message that's received on the car, and then it loads to the sat-nav. But a nice feature. It's especially nice to be able to see the state of charge of the car, how many miles range you've got on the car, so to see that from inside the house without having to pop outside. That is really handy to monitor your charging sessions and just to keep an eye on how many miles you've got to go. So I'm actually finding the app, both the old one and the new one, there are two versions out there, both of them are really good and very effective. The big one for me is I always forget to lock my car, so it's nice to be able to look at the app and see if it's locked, and then you haven't got to go outside, but also to lock the car remotely as well. And if someone loses the keys, then from the app I could unlock the car from wherever it is and let somebody into the car. I do like the app interface on the Mini, and what's really, really pleasing is I've noticed in the first few days of ownership of the car that the state of charge and the miles to go, the GOM, did go down even though I wasn't using the car. So on one day I actually added 0.7 of a kilowatt hour to the car, but the range and the state of charge went down. It was almost as if there was some vampire drain on the car, using more of it, or as a charging session starts up, it was using more energy than you were actually adding into the car. It was a very odd scenario, but that was only in the first few days that I noticed that. Ever since, the car hasn't lost anything. It hasn't lost any percentage of state of charge or any miles overnight at all. Even for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, sat stood not being used. So vampire drain is really, really small on this car. The only thing that I have got turned off, I've got the GPS tracker turned off on the car. I'm not sure whether I want it on or whether I don't. I think I've got it turned off because I don't want to encourage the car to be alive and drain the battery all the time. But I sort of would like to have the tracker there in case the car's stolen, to have it on. But you can turn it on remotely as and when needed on the app. So I'm not sure whether I should be having it set on or whether I should be having it set off or not. But yeah, GPS is turned off at the moment. What else have I got? I've installed... Oh, let's see if I can show you. I've installed one of these, a little USB double socket for the 12 volt socket, but on it there's a little digital readout, and that's the voltage for the 12 volt battery. It's only something like, I don't know, $2.99, $3.99 from eBay, coming over from China. What I really like about that is you can see what the voltage is, and it's currently showing 14.345 volts. But when the high voltage battery isn't in use, it'll be showing 12 point something. So I can keep an eye on what the voltage of the 12 volt battery is and whether it's draining particularly low when I've left it for a few days. What I'm really happy with is that I have left it for up to a week, and I have noticed that the voltage has stayed the same on the 12 volt battery. It's not draining being left for a week parked on the driveway. So very, very happy that the 12 volt battery management looks to be really, really good in this car. Efficiency wise, it's probably worth talking about that. Now that we're into winter and it's 0 degrees outside or slightly below that, 0 degrees C, I'm I'm seeing 3.8 to 4.2 miles per kilowatt hour on my trips with the heater on and not preconditioning it before I go. So that compares quite well to the Kona. I'd probably say on my initial observations, when you're driving away with the heater to start with, it has a bigger impact than what the Kona did. I think the Kona heating system was a little more efficient than the Mini. But other than that, the efficiency looks to be about the same. So that backs up what I was seeing in the summer efficiency on how brilliant the efficiency of this Mini is. It still seems to be pretty good in winter. So anything above 4 miles per kilowatt hour on average over a journey, even in the winter, we're still talking 112 to 116 miles of range. So I think that's really quite good. I know 100 miles isn't a lot, but 100 miles is a long way. Here in Norfolk, it would take me over 2 hours to drive 110 miles, because you can't average a speed of 50 to 55 miles an hour without breaking the speed limit. There's too much traffic, there's too many narrow roads, there's too many A and B roads, you just can't get up to speed, and there's too many villages that you have to drive through at 30 miles an hour. So here in Norfolk again, I can go basically anywhere, any drive in the car for 2.5 hours, even in winter, without having to worry about charging, and that makes this car really, really good. Charging wise, I use the MyEnergy Zappi charger. I use that because I have solar panels, but I also use it because it's a good smart charger that does balance the load of your house. So if you're using a lot of electricity in your house and trying to charge at the same time, you can have device limits and house limits, and it can throttle those charge rates down so you don't trip the fuses in your home. So I've really, really liked using it. I've charged mostly from solar energy so far. Even though we're in winter and even though there hasn't been that much, I've managed to not charge in public so far and not pay for a charge. I say not pay. I'm on OCTOPUS Agile tariff now, and I have charged once overnight at ½ per kilowatt hour. It was so cheap, I couldn't resist but put 7 or 8 kilowatt hours in the car. But the integration with the Zappi charger is working really well. Most of the features I've now tried with the Zappi and the car on different lowering the charge rates to reduced and low and high levels. That's worked really well, so I can charge the car at anything from 1 or 2 kilowatts during times of solar usage to 3.5 kilowatts. I think it's 3.6 or 3.8 kilowatts is the lowest setting for the fast charge. The mid setting for the fast charge, I can get about 5.8 kilowatts to 6 kilowatts charging rate, and then the absolute maximum one is 7.2 kilowatts. So the charging rates in the car and how it works are really, really good, apart from the charge door, as I said. The only thing I really miss is I wish it would show you the charge rate inside the car. So again, you've got to use third-party tools like the MyEnergy app to see what rate it is actually charging at. So I suppose it's not the end of the world not knowing the rate it's charging at, but it is really handy. It's handy when you're on a rapid charger to see what rate you're actually getting, because it gives you a clue about how long it's going to take to charge up, and also how cold the battery is, etc., as to whether you're getting a good charge rate or not. So I do miss that from the Kona. That is something that the Mini ought to have. All electric cars should tell you the charging rate that you're receiving at the point that it's charging. I can't understand why you wouldn't. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about every single feature in the car, but there are 2 features of the Mini that I have really, really liked that I wasn't expecting, so I'll share that with you. The first is the boot space. The Mini has a setting on the rear seats that you can adjust the verticalness of the seat. So whereas it's normally like that, you can actually adjust it right forward so it's actually vertical, and that way passengers in the back won't be very comfortable at all. But if you haven't got passengers in the back, it gives you a squarer area in the boot, more storage space in the boot. Now for us, with Cracker in the boot and mostly just shopping goes in the back seats, then it works really, really well to have that adjusted and tilted forward to give more space in the boot. So cargo space, which you would think is really, really small in the Mini, actually it's really, really good. There's plenty of space in the boot for Cracker. There's plenty of space in the boot for shopping. The other one that's really worth noting is on this iDrive type interface here, I really don't like how many buttons there are and all the descriptions on them. So you've got media, map, menu, com, nav, back and option, plus the actual circular dial and a button on the top. So you've got all those things there, but to look at them, as you can see on the video, I'm not looking where I'm going. So to have those things there that I have to use to adjust my media screen here in front of me, I find it awkward compared to the Kona Electric, where the Kona Electric had the screen up here and all the buttons are up here at the front of the dash as well. So everything is in one place where you're looking forward, where you're driving, so that was good. In the Mini, there's more use of these buttons down by the handbrake, and it distracts your line of vision more during driving. But there's a really nice feature on this Mini, which, again, I think all cars should have this. That, you know, the radio buttons that you have for your channels, where you press and hold the button on, you know, Radio 2 or Radio 1, and it stores the radio station. Well, you can use those buttons to store other things, not just the radio station. So I have stored on those buttons the power flow diagram, the trip meter, and the charging information. So these would normally be menus that you'd have to go through on the iDrive and do 3-4 clicks or more to get to them, to see what you want to see. Now they're pre-programmed on button, well, I've put them on 1, 5 and 6. So if I want my trip meters, I just press button 1 and the trip meter pops up. So anything that you want, whether it's the sat-nav screen or the trip meters or all those sort of things, you can have them on the pre-programmed functions. You haven't got to scan through the menus. Now that I really like, and it makes sense because, again, it's in front of you, it's in your line of sight, so I haven't got to look far away from where I'm driving to actually see the buttons. It's just really, really sensible. So 2 little features of this Mini that have added to my experience, because it's better than what I thought it was when I was getting the car. I did think that this iDrive system was... It's just not my cup of tea. After coming from the Hyundai system, I think that was better. But now with the pre-programmed buttons, all of my concerns are gone. I really, really like this system. And that voyage of discovery, I think, is going on and on. The more I get used to the car, the more I read the manual, the more I find out how the alarm system works and it turns on and off. Everything is just coming as a positive experience. There's nothing, other than the charge port, that is a negative on this car at all. So I thoroughly recommend that if you're thinking about a small electric car and you don't need a huge amount of range, but you want a big smile on your face, then go and get yourself a test drive in a Mini Cooper SE. This really is a brilliant car. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you found some of that useful or interesting. If you're some of my previous subscribers and you've seen my Kona content, or you've got a Kona yourself, I hope the comparison, seeing what another electric car, this Mini, is actually like, and what the experience is like moving from one to the other. I am quite surprised that moving from the Kona Electric, which was, I think, one of the best electric cars you could buy out there, moving to the Mini, I was expecting more negatives. And there aren't. The fun of driving this car and how good quality the car is just outweighs all of the, shall we say, technical specification differences between the two, where the Kona beats the Mini on paper, but the ownership experience, it doesn't. This Mini is a much nicer ownership experience than the Kona Electric. So as always, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. Definitely click like. You've watched it all the way to the end, so you must have liked this video. Click like, it really helps with the YouTube algorithms. And see you again soon for more videos and more detail about this Mini Electric. Bye for now.